Hi there, this is Paul Glumaz once again with General Welfare Presents. And so a lot of things are happening. What's happening right now is that we're, we're moving very rapidly to a turning point in world history. Um, you have essentially um, uh, the following situation. You have Donald Trump moving very rapidly to establish some kind of relationship with Russia, despite every effort that's being made by his staff to sabotage his cabinet to sabotage this. And he forced this pompous fat slob, Pompeo, to go meet with Putin and Lavrov and Putin. And let me tell you something. This fat slob got his face slapped because he's a loudmouth, bumbling idiot, and these are sophisticated people, and they handed it to him. And I think they made him shut up and listen. So I don't know where that's all going to go. But what Trump is trying to do right now is establish a working relationship with Russia to deal with common problems like terrorism, the drug trade, that kind of stuff. And also begin to wind down the whole nuclear arms race. Establish the trust. You have to establish the trust first. You have to establish a relationship, a trusting relationship where they trust you, you trust them. The thing about the British Empire and the way it works is they destroy the trust between, they play games to destroy the trust between the major powers so that they never trust one another, always in a paranoid state of we can't trust them, no, we can't trust them, no, we can't trust them, no, we can't trust them, therefore we can't work together. And that's how it works, is you prevent that process from occurring. And you promote a view that the Russians aren't trusted, can't be trusted. In Russia, the U.S. can't be trusted. In China, can't be trusted. China can't trust the Russians. Russians can't trust China, and so on and so forth. This is how it works. This is the way this thing works, right? So Trump is trying to overcome that, because if you're going to deal with anything, if you're going to have the United States become better, you're not going to be able to carry out the policies that you can carry out because the British Empire is going to stop you. But if you have an understanding with Russia and China on where the world's going to go, then you can work things out. And so everything is being vectored and preventing that from happening, but then Trump is committed to doing that. So you have Bolton trying to get a war going in Iran, and you have Pompeo has admitted that he is very much oriented towards the work of Bernard Lewis, who became the number one Orientologist, he was in British intelligence, he was in British Foreign Office, he was in the British military during World War II. He went on to be the top Islamic scholar in Great Britain, and then he moved to Princeton and he developed the idea of the Bernard Lewis plan, which is the plan of how to keep the empire going by promoting the schisms in Islam between the moderates and the Salafists or extremists, and between the Shias and the Sunnis, and so forth and so on, and promoting out of that, promoting the kind of chaos in the Islamic world that has led to terrorism, has led to wars, has led to wars in Africa, terrorism all the way from the Philippines and Malaysia and southern Thailand, all the way across, into western China, across India, Pakistan, into Afghanistan, and all of the stands that were once part of the Soviet Union, all the way across. Permanent fracturing, permanent disintegration of these countries. And ISIS is a product of this, and Al-Qaeda is a product of this. All of this is the Bernard Lewis plan, to break up all these countries and create chaos throughout this entire arc, from the Philippines all the way over to Europe, down into Africa, all the way up into what was once the Soviet Union or Russia, Chechnya, places like that. And now you have all these refugees coming into Europe, Islamic refugees, Muslim refugees, from this chaos. This is the plan that in part was laid out in the idea of the clash of civilizations, but Samuel Huntington didn't and Brzezinski didn't lay out a plan. They laid out, like, okay, this is the next phase of how the world's going to go, because the Cold War is over, and now these so-called cultural differences are going to be the basis of the new confrontations and what have you. But they didn't lay out a plan. The Bernard Lewis plan is what's been implemented under the Bush administration since 9/11, beginning in the Clinton period, but also with Obama. And so this Bernard Lewis plan is what you're dealing with. And it's had an incredibly horrible effect. And this is threatening the existence of Russia. It's threatening the existence of Pakistan. It's threatening the existence of India. It's threatening the existence of Iran. Look what it did in Iraq. Okay? And so forth and so on. And one of the reasons they're really going after Iran, this crowd is really going after Iran, is for two reasons. One is that Saudi Arabia is no longer as much of a pawn as it used to be, and it is moving to warm its relationship to Iran. And this is under the influence of Trump. This is under the influence of Putin. This is under the influence, in part, of China's and the potential Belt and Road. Because Iran is the center of the Belt and Road. If you're going to have the Belt and Road go into Saudi Arabia, it's going to go through Iran. So there is this process going on, and Iraq has sort of played a mediating role, because it's a Shiite country. It's very close to Iran. And, of course, the destabilization of Iran led to essentially Iraq being very close to Iran. And they say, well, Iraq won the war. Well, no, Iraq didn't win the war. The United States destroyed Iraq. I mean, Iran didn't win the war. The United States destroyed Iraq, and part of that destruction led to the development of ISIS, which is even more destruction. So essentially, that's what Putin is trying to cool out. That's what Trump wants to cool out. That's what people who want development, who want sanity, want to cool out. So that's why they're targeting Iran. Also, the oil, and what happened is that in the UAE port, there are some Saudi and UAE sabotage of some tankers, and whether it was the Houthis who did it or whether it was whatever, the scuttlebutt is Iran did it. Now this is an excuse to invade it, to attack Iran, right? So this is the kind of thing that's going on. This is what Bolton and Pompeo and these people are all about. And and then Iran is the enemy. Iran is the Satan. Blah blah blah. Iran is the greatest terrorist threat in the world. It's all lies. It's all lies. Iran was involved in 9/11. It's all lies. All of it's lies. These people all lie, and they know they're lying when they lie. It's true. They know they're lying when they lie. And so here's Trump with this gaggle of crap heads, and and then he's moving ahead and he's announced that he's going to meet with Xi and Putin in a trilateral meeting at the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan, between June 27th and 28th. So he's announcing that he's moving in that direction to work with these countries, while these guys are out to wreck it. So what's going on here? Well, it's the same thing going on in Congress, right? They attacked Bill Barr. They attacked anybody that they went all out ballistic to attack him. They set up this whole thing around Mueller. Well, Mueller, it wasn't Mueller that issued that report. It was the staff that was, totally rabidly opposed to Trump. That was the staff, even more so than Mueller. They set it out. Mueller signed on. So then they said, well, you didn't consider our objections, blah 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 blah, and therefore you lied, blah 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 blah, and it's total bullshit. So Barr come under massive attack from the Congress, right? It's not over. They're still saying Russia collusion. The Senate is going to continue investigating. The Senate, which is Republican control, is going to continue investigating Russia collusion by subpoenaing Don Jr. So what the hell's going on? Well, it's a continuation. They're not stopping. And Mueller's report says that that Russia interfered. Russia did interfere. Again, and so on Thursday evening, well, you won't get to see this, but we're having another. You can pick it up later on the LaRouche Political Action Committee site. We're having another dialogue between Barbara Boyd, former CIA analyst Larry Johnson, and former NSA, National Security Agency Technical Director Bill Binney. And that's going to be dynamite. Why? Because something very big happened yesterday. Today is the 15th of May. Yesterday was the 14th of May. Bill Barr appointed a special counsel with subpoena powers to start to go for it. And his name is John Durham. And he's from Connecticut. And he's already been working 2 months on this. And they are going to begin the process of dismantling the apparatus in the CIA, but most of all in the FBI, in the Justice Department, in the State Department, that was behind this whole attempted coup. And you haven't seen anything yet. And the person who played the most central role within our government appears to be John Brennan, in direct collaboration with the British. So all of this is starting. It's gonna go, and it will probably involve criminal charges of false fabricating to get the FISA warrants and so forth. So this is the beginning of a counter-coup, a constitutional counter-coup against this police state apparatus that's been increasingly powerful through the Bush period and the Obama period, centered around the aftermath of 9/11. That apparatus is now going to come under attack through a special counsel. Now, who is John Durham? I'm going to give you a sense of who John Durham is. He's from Connecticut, and back in the period of Clinton, Janet Reno, the former Attorney General, requested that John Durham investigate the Whitey Bulger situation. The FBI framed up 4 people in order to protect Whitey Bulger, who was a CIA, who was an FBI informant. And it was a very corrupt relationship between Whitey Bulger, organized crime figure, who was an FBI informant, and the FBI out of Boston. At the time that Durham was appointed, was asked to look into this, Robert Mueller was the Assistant Attorney General, Assistant U.S. Attorney out of Boston, and then later became the U.S. Attorney after William Well left and became head of the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. And it was William Well who subsequently, a few years later, and 1986, organized the assassination of Lyndon LaRouche, which was stopped by um, Ronald Reagan. It's the same William Well who's entered the presidential race as the so far sole Republican challenger to Donald Trump in the Republican primaries. So there is a Republican primary candidate being run against, and it's the man who was the district attorney in Boston who began the LaRouche case, and Robert Mueller took over the LaRouche case from him. This same Robert Mueller, in that same time frame, was organizing through letters to prevent these individuals that were framed up from being allowed to be released. In other words, the FBI was caught framing people up to protect an organized crime boss. Robert Mueller was involved in protecting Whitey Bulger and in preventing these people from having a chance to get out. And it was John Durham in Connecticut who was asked by the Justice Department to investigate the situation. So you have somebody from Connecticut, not part of the Boston operation, not part of the New York operation, not part of Washington, with a grand jury already ready to go to begin that process. And Robert Mueller is well known to this person for being part of the Whitey Bulger fiasco. So this tells you a little bit about where this is going to go. And this is the beginning of the counter-coup. And as that process goes underway, then you're going to start to see the institutions that have controlled the United States, controlled it in a police state manner, start to, since the death of Kennedy, since the assassination of Kennedy, which was a coup, you're going to see those institutions starting to break apart. And that's what has to happen. If you can't do that, you can't move the country forward. You can't do what is required to so-called make America great again. You're not going to make America great again because you can't. Now, jumping back to the Chinese situation, Donald Trump today in an address to oil workers said that Xi Jinping is a profound friend of his, a profound friend. So what is that all about? Now, what is Xi Jinping doing? He spoke recently at a conference on the dialogue of civilizations. 97 nations were represented, a dialogue of civilizations. And what he's saying is that not all civilizations end up in conflict. So what is he? He's directly challenging the Bernard Lewis plan of the Clash of Civilizations, the Samuel Huntington plan of the Clash of Civilizations. So this is the process that's going on. So is Donald Trump in favor of the Clash of Civilizations, or is he in favor of the dialogue of civilizations? While Xi Jinping he considers to be a profound friend, then I would indicate that he's more inclined towards a dialogue of civilizations. Russian culture is totally different than Chinese culture. Western culture is totally different than Chinese culture. Indian culture is totally different than all those three. Nonetheless, you have a dialogue of civilizations. That's how you deal with things. And what Xi Jinping is saying is that the way you conduct a dialogue is on the basis of the best art, the best and most profound art. In the case of European culture, it's Shakespeare and Schiller and Goethe and so forth. In the case of Chinese culture, something similar. So you bring the highest artistic quality of that culture and you make it available to the other cultures so that the other cultures can understand that culture from its highest standpoint. Now, what is this whole trade thing that's going on? Because, I mean, people are wondering, what the hell is going on? Trump is just up the ante, 25% from 10%. The trade negotiation didn't result in a trade deal. And then China is now going to put on more tariffs on U.S. goods coming in. It's a trade war. What's this? Yet, the contradiction is that Xi Jinping is his close friend, and the trade talks are continuing, and Trump is saying that there will ultimately be a deal. So what the hell is going on here? Well, here's what I'm thinking. Okay. The whole system is screwed. Okay? Most of the goods coming, a lot of the goods coming in from China are made with Chinese labor, but by companies which are not Chinese. These are international companies. They really don't have a nation that they're part of. These international companies have their financial headquarters in the Cayman Islands or in Liechtenstein or someplace like that, so they can evade taxes. And then they have their manufacturing in a third world country or China, in the case of it, like Apple. For instance, Apple's iPhones are produced in China, right? They're not produced in the United States, right? But Apple is paying the Chinese X, but they're charging you Y. That differential is profit for Apple. And what does Apple do with that money? Does it bring that money back into the U.S. economy to invest in the U.S. economy? Probably not, because the money goes into, I'm not saying this is true for Apple, but a lot of these companies, they have all their financial headquarters outside of the United States. So these multi-global national corporations are screwing everybody. They're screwing the Chinese worker, they're screwing the U.S. Worker, they're screwing everybody. So what does a tariff do? Who does it hit? Does it hit the Chinese? Well, those workers in China may not be able to produce, so they may be, they might want to send the work to some other third world country. But China's Belt and Road is growing. Those people in China who would not be employed and that could be employed in something else. Well, what about the United States? Well, what's wrong with, well, if it's 25% more, why don't, maybe we can produce it in the United States. Maybe we can have a factory in the United States, do the same thing. Maybe it's more competitive, right? We're not going to get a tariff if we do it in the U.S. So maybe we should produce the same thing in the United States instead of going overseas, put Americans back to work. So that's kind of the orientation I see in Trump, but it's only the beginning, because at the core of the problem is this multinational corporate structure connected to a financial system where the profits don't return to the development of the United States, because they're not interested. All the United States has been in the recent period is the end consumer. Dollars are created in the U.S. as an end consumer, but you're not creating any wealth in the U.S. You're not creating the level of wealth required to sustain the United States. Well, that whole system is being shaken up by Donald Trump. He's shaking up the whole system, the whole global system. And who is he going to work with to create a new system? Well, it's going to have to be China. So you have this process going on, and the problem with Donald Trump is he doesn't have any, outside of himself, he doesn't have a body of theory, a body of ideas that he can point to for his subordinates to follow. And that body of ideas exists in Lyndon LaRouche. This is work. Lyndon LaRouche's work has been absolutely laid the foundation for all this. The Belt and Road, a new fixed exchange system, the Glass-Steagall. The whole idea of the economy is to develop the human beings, develop humanity, develop human beings, not simply make a profit. And so we're coming into a period where those ideas, which are also reflected in the past in Hamilton, in Benjamin Franklin, in Lincoln, in McKinley, and in FDR and Kennedy, can be brought back as a body of thought that can compete with the British system of Keynesianism or Milton Friedman or Friedrich von Hayek or Friedrich von Mises or all these British economists, Adam Smith, Karl Marx, all of those are British system economists. The American system economists have a very radical different idea. To them, the economy is not a question of supply and demand. It's a question of building the physical economic infrastructure, developing manufacturers, developing an expanded division of labor, developing the infrastructure so you can engage more people in the productive process, so you can connect up whole parts of the world. That's the American system of economics. It has nothing to do with the materialism of Karl Marx. It has nothing to do with the materialism of Adam Smith. It has nothing to do with laissez-faire or non-laissez-faire or any of that. There's an intention. And the private sector represents that intention. The government represents that intention. And that's where Donald Trump is coming. He's not saying he's for socialism or communism or even free market capitalism. He has an intention of building the country. So that's where he's going to have to go with those ideas, because that's how you develop nations. And that's where China's going. And that's where other nations have to go. And this is the direction that Trump will have to go in. And so the exoneration of LaRouche is absolutely important. We have the memorial in New York on the 8th of Saturday, the 8th of June. If you contact me, we'll tell you where to come for the memorial for Lyndon LaRouche on the 8th. And this is on the 8th of June. It's very, very important.